My name is Emily, and I never thought I would find myself in this situation. I still can't fully understand how it all happened, but sometimes life has a way of spinning out of control, and we're left helpless, caught in its whirlwind. I never imagined my life would take this turn, but it did. This is the story of what happened when my husband's brother, Adam, stayed over at our house. It all began on a cold winter evening, just a few months ago. My husband, Chris, and I had been married for nearly 5 years, and though we'd been through our share of challenges, I thought we were happy. We had our own routine, weekends spent together, evenings winding down in front of the TV, and dinners at the table with laughter filling the room. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Adam, Chris's younger brother, had always been part of our lives, but he was more of a background figure, someone we'd see during holidays or family gatherings. He had his own life, his own friends, and his own issues, but he was family. I never thought much of him, at least not in a way that could raise any red flags. However, that evening, everything changed. Chris came home that day with a tired but eager expression, telling me Adam would be staying over for a couple of days. He had some work in town and needed a place to crash, and since we had the space, it made sense. I didn't mind. Adam was family, after all. At first, the presence of another person in the house didn't feel like a big deal. It was just for a few days, and we had plenty of room. The first evening, we all had dinner together. Chris and Adam talked about work, about their childhood memories, and I sat quietly listening. There was an ease to the conversation, but there was something about the way Adam looked at me that made me feel uneasy. It wasn't anything overt, just a lingering glance, a shift in the air. But I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just my imagination. Still, as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The next day, things started to shift. I was in the kitchen, preparing lunch, when Adam walked in. I was bent over the counter, chopping vegetables, completely unaware of his approach. Then I felt him, his presence looming behind me. It wasn't like the usual presence of someone walking into the room. It was more invasive. I straightened up, startled, and turned to find him standing way too close. "Hey, he said, his voice soft but oddly intimate. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I backed away slightly, trying to keep things casual, even though a knot had begun to form in my stomach. "No, you're fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just making lunch." Adam didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer, almost as if he was testing my boundaries. I didn't know how to react. He was my brother-in-law. This shouldn't feel weird, but for some reason, it did. The silence between us stretched too long, and I found myself searching for something to say to break the tension. But then he spoke again, his words catching me off guard. "You look really good today, he said, his eyes lingering on me a little too long. "You've always had this charm about you." I froze, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. I tried to laugh it off, but the words felt heavy in the air. Was I just overthinking it? Maybe he was just being friendly. He was family, after all. But still, there was something about his tone that unsettled me. "Thanks, Adam," I said quickly, turning back to the counter, hoping the conversation would end. But instead, I could feel his eyes on me burning. The silence in the kitchen became suffocating. Finally, I broke the awkwardness by quickly finishing up lunch and serving it. Adam seemed to snap out of whatever mood he had been in and sat down at the table, talking more normally as if nothing had happened. Chris came into the room a few minutes later, and everything seemed to return to normal. But I couldn't shake that feeling, the one that told me something wasn't right. That night, after we had finished dinner, Chris and Adam decided to watch a game on TV. I excused myself to go to bed early, feeling unusually tired. But as I lay in bed, the sounds of their laughter from the living room echoed through the house. I stared at the ceiling, trying to quiet my thoughts, but I kept replaying the strange encounter in the kitchen. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Chris had left for work, and Adam was still asleep, or so I thought. I went about my day, trying to push away the unease that had settled in my chest. But as the day wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Around lunchtime, I was in the living room when Adam walked in. This time, he didn't just look at me like before. He came right up to me, his eyes dark with something I couldn't place. He started, his voice low, almost a whisper. "We need to talk." I blinked, confused. "About what?" I asked, trying to hide my nervousness. "About us," he said, and his words sent a chill down my spine. "I've been thinking about you, a lot." My heart skipped a beat. "Adam, what are you talking about?" I stammered, trying to back away from him. But there was nowhere to go. He was too close now, too close for comfort. Before I could protest any further, his hand was on my arm, pulling me closer. His touch was firm, possessive, and in that instant, I realized he wasn't joking. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the shift, the hunger, the desire that had been growing since yesterday. "Adam, stop." I gasped, pushing against him, my heart racing with panic. But his grip tightened. "You don't understand, he murmured, his voice now husky. "This is what we both want. You felt it too, haven't you?" I wanted to scream, to fight back, but something inside me was paralyzed with fear. How could this be happening? How could my husband's brother be doing this to me? My mind was in a state of shock, and my heart raced violently in my chest as if it were about to burst. What was happening? How had it escalated so quickly? This wasn't the brother-in-law I had known for years, and it certainly wasn't the life I had imagined for myself. Everything was spiraling out of control. I tried to pull away, my hands pushing against Adam's chest, but he was stronger than I expected. His grip was firm, like he was determined to have his way, and the more I struggled, the tighter his hold seemed to get. I felt like I couldn't breathe, my chest constricting as my mind screamed for me to escape. "Let me go, Adam." I gasped, my voice filled with fear and desperation. But his face remained calm, almost serene, as though this was something completely natural, something that had been building for a while. "You don't understand, he said softly, almost too softly, his breath warm against my ear. "You've been avoiding it, but I can see it. I can see what you want. You're just scared." His words made no sense. I was scared, yes, but it wasn't because of some hidden desire I'd been suppressing. No, it was because of what he was doing to me now, to my marriage, to my sense of self. I pushed harder against him, finally breaking free, my pulse pounding in my ears. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table in the living room. "This isn't you. This isn't us." I shouted, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "You're sick. You need to leave." Adam took a step forward, his expression shifting for a moment. Was that regret, guilt, or just frustration? But whatever flicker of humanity I thought I saw vanished quickly, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "You think I'm sick?" he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "You don't get it, Em. I'm doing this for you. For us. Don't you see? You've been so distant lately, so cold. I thought maybe this would bring us closer." I felt nauseous. His words didn't make any sense, and I knew deep down that this wasn't about closeness. It wasn't about a connection. It was about control. It always had been. My mind raced, and I could barely hold it together. I had never felt so trapped in my life, so small and insignificant. But as I stood there, trembling, I knew one thing. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let him control me, couldn't let him destroy my sense of self-worth, my marriage, my peace. "No, Adam," I said, my voice finally gaining strength. "This isn't happening. You need to leave. Now." For a moment, he just stared at me, as though trying to decide if I was bluffing. His jaw clenched, and I could see the anger building behind his eyes. But there was no way I was backing down. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me any longer. "Fine," he spat, turning on his heel and walking toward the door. "But don't think you're in control of this. You've made your choice. You'll regret it." I watched as he left, his footsteps heavy and filled with resentment. The door slammed behind him, and I was left standing in the living room, my body trembling and my mind racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had just stood up for myself, for my dignity. But the relief was short-lived. My heart still pounded in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Not just from Adam, but from Chris as well. How had this gone so far without him noticing? How could he have let his brother invade our space, our home, and cross such a line? I needed to talk to Chris, but a part of me feared what he would say. Would he believe me? Would he defend his brother? Hours passed, and Chris finally came home. He didn't seem to notice anything was wrong at first, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. He had no idea what had happened, no idea about the confrontation between Adam and me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. As soon as he stepped through the door, I rushed to him, grabbing his arms in a desperate attempt to make him understand. Chris, I need to talk to you. It's about Adam. It's about everything that happened today. His eyes narrowed, confusion filling his expression. What are you talking about, Em? Your brother. He tried to do something. He tried to force me into something I didn't want, I stammered, tears streaming down my face. He took advantage of me, Chris. He came onto me, and I don't know how it got this far, but I couldn't stop him. I need you to believe me. Please. Chris's face went pale. He took a step back, his body stiff with shock. His mouth opened and closed like he couldn't find the words, but I could see the anger building in his eyes. Not at Adam, no, it was directed at me. You're lying, he said quietly, almost too quietly. You must be making this up. Why would Adam do that? I swear to God, Chris. It's the truth. I cried out, stepping closer to him. I don't know what's gotten into him, but he tried to hurt me. I don't know how to explain it, but I need you to believe me. He shook his head, his hands clenched into fists. I can't. I just can't. I felt my heart shatter. I had hoped that he would believe me, that he would stand by me, but instead, he was choosing his brother over me. I had just revealed the most terrifying thing that had ever happened to me, and he was rejecting it. I don't know what's happening anymore, I whispered, backing away from him. I don't know if I can stay here. I don't know if I can stay with you. Chris said nothing. He just stood there, staring at me, his eyes full of confusion and doubt. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. It was about saving myself. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and without a word, I walked out of the house. I went to my best friend Sarah's house that night, and she didn't ask questions. She just opened the door and embraced me. I felt a small sliver of relief, but also a deep, aching sadness. It took a while to process everything what had happened, what could have happened. But I eventually filed for divorce. The marriage that I had once cherished had been shattered beyond repair. Chris couldn't stand by me when I needed him the most. Months have passed since that night, and though the pain hasn't completely gone away, I've found a way to heal. I'm still rebuilding my life, piece by piece. As for Adam, I haven't heard from him since that day. I don't know where he is, and frankly, I don't care. The man I once trusted, both of them, are no longer in my life. I've learned one thing through all of this. I deserve more. I deserve respect, trust, and a love that doesn't manipulate or control. I deserve to feel safe and valued. And no matter what happened, I will never let anyone take that from me again.